After finally getting around to editing these videos, we are back and off onto a new adventure, China. So we checked in, and the visa people at the gate were already super strict about my visa, asking me all these questions, and they actually misread my visa thinking that it was expired. So, why China, you may ask? Well, back when I was in Laos, I randomly encountered a group of Chinese motorcycle riders that also happened to be riding across Laos at the same time. Xiao Taya, or Small Sun in English, and her friends had decided that they wanted to try motorcycling across various Southeast Asian countries and explore around. Considering that at that current moment in time, our physical goals were exactly the same, we quickly hit it off and became friends. Even though our time together was short, we parted ways with a friendship, and she gave me an open invite to come to China and motorcycle around together. So normally when people say things like that, I take it with a grain of salt. I take it as just a formality, a just being friendly thing. I've said that to people. They've said it to me in the past. We never speak again, and we move on with our lives. So I originally had zero intention of making my way to China. But after being asked a few times, multiple times over the span of a few months, I decided that this was an opportunity for me and I probably shouldn't pass it up. I had no idea how I would get a license in China, nor how I'd even get a motorcycle. She just said, "Don't worry about it, I'll help you through the whole process." Trying to search things on Google wasn't helpful either, so I would just have to go into China and hope that everything would just work out. After a very grueling visa application process, here we are. It wasn't as big of a pain in the ass as that statement might lead on, but because I was applying for a Chinese visa while traveling through Indonesia and not in the country where my passport originates, it just added a huge annoying layer of bureaucracy that I had to deal with. Granted, since this was also such a one-off scenario, I don't really feel like going into specifics, but just know it was annoying to say the least. Landing in China was also interesting. The minute I had landed, I had an officer waiting for me outside the gate, and he immediately asked me if I could follow him. I guess being a foreigner, traveling with a US passport and arriving in China by myself in a small town that isn't really known for having international foreigners flying to, seemed really suspicious to them, which is fair enough, I guess. After getting out of the airport, it was time to meet up with Sun, which turned out to be a bit of a kerfuffle because it turns out that the airport has multiple exits. Once that was sorted out though, it was time to get into town. Since Sun was traveling by motorcycle, there wasn't any way for me to carry my bags in its current layout, so I had to take the bus. After a scenic 1-hour bus ride from the airport, we make it to Lijiang, where we disembark and try to figure out how the hell we were going to get to the hotel. Sun has the brilliant idea to call the guest house and see if they can send somebody over to come and grab us. We were about a 5-minute walk from the hotel, but we had no way of actually getting there because we didn't know how to navigate through the old town. And you can't really see from the video, but it's actually pretty confusing once you're in there. The guest house had no issue obliging with our request and was more than happy to help us out. It's apparently such a common problem for tourists to get lost going through here that they're used to just coming out and meeting people and helping them walk in. Once we make it to the guest house, we're greeted by the owner's puppies, and they're adorable. They're super friendly and super cute.
Hello.
Hello.
你好.
你好. We sit down and he immediately makes me a cup of tea without even asking. He studied in London and spoke this really interesting English. His accent sounded like he was trying to be someone from the Peaky Blinders, but then also sounded like he was Irish, but like distinctly different. I don't really know how to put it, and I wish I had audio of him talking, but I don't. The owner's really cool. He's super nice, really eccentric. He invited us to go have hot pot with him. So that's gonna be cool. I'm gonna bring my camera and see what kind of shenanigans we get into. And yeah, this room is really nice. Apparently though, the room is overpriced for what you can be paying to be around here. But it is really cool and super traditional and in a really cool little area. So I can't really complain. Well, I guess traditional in the sense that there's not a giant TV and a really nice shower and toilet. So yeah, that's cool. Walking through the old town is sick. It's definitely different than anything I've seen traveling through other Asian countries so far. From what I can also see though, the old town seems kind of like a tourist trap. But I'm gonna hold my judgment until I actually give it a little bit more time because again, I've only been here for like, what, an hour. On the way to the hot pot restaurant, I stop and take some really cool photos. When we make it to the hot pot restaurant,
You smell it?
I smell it. I'm hit with a giant waft of different aromas. The spices are so strong, the steam is thickening the air. It was delicious and a perfect meal to start my time in China. After dinner, I get invited to join everyone at a bar that happened to also have live music playing. Considering that this was my first night in the country and I was graciously invited out, I really couldn't say no. Also, it's really not like I had anything better to do at the moment either. What I did find really interesting at this bar was that they served no Chinese alcohol and they had a fake fire pit. Everything was either an import from the US or from Laos, and I find that to be ironically funny because they held beer from both of those countries with such a high regard, especially American beer. Though I didn't come here to pay double the price for a mediocre beer I could have had in the US. I came here to ride a motorcycle and explore cool places. A golden squatty potty. Now that's luxury. The first order of business on this rainy morning was to have a nice warm bowl of some of the best noodles I've ever had. I mean, seriously, look at this bowl and just tell me it doesn't look delicious. After breakfast, it was time to get going with our day. The plan was to try and figure out where I could acquire a motorcycle and what I would need to do to get a license. The first order of business was to go and check out a motorcycle shop. Sun picked out this place specifically because they cater to a lot of adventure riders. And apparently, the owner spoke a reasonable amount of English, so even I could communicate with them. I took a Chinese version of an Uber taxi to the shop, and 20 minutes later, I was there. At the shop, I meet up with Sun, and the owner immediately sits us down for a cigarette and some tea. I'm really starting to notice a trend here. Chinese men, they all seem to smoke, and they have no problem at all sharing a cigarette with me. It's just a shame that I don't smoke, but I do drink tea, so I can happily oblige to that. Once we finished, we started talking bikes, and more bikes. We talked different sizes and styles, but I was immediately leaning towards an adventure bike. I came into China knowing I wanted to get an adventure bike. I didn't want to ride any other bike but an adventure bike. I was so over and tired of having to strap my backpack the way I did in Southeast Asia, the way that I had to always be worried about the rain or the elements and getting my bag wet. I just wanted to try something different and something way more comfortable. While I was at the shop, they had a pretty incredible selection of bikes. After the owner heard our plan, he pretty much said that I could rent any bike he owned from him. Obviously, before any more discussions could happen, I would need to test ride some bikes. Fortunately, the motorcycle shop is located on a small stretch of road that had some construction nearby, which meant that there were some empty roads that I could test ride on, which is actually phenomenal and a perfect stroke of luck for me, since I've never ridden a motorcycle of this size before. And also, I still don't have a license, so if I rode on the real road and got pulled over, I'd probably be fucked. Riding around and testing out a couple of the bikes, the motorcycle shop owner offers to drive us to the police station so we could inquire about what I would need to get my license. Which, honestly, is super nice of him, and something I completely wasn't expecting at all. Once we make it to the police station, and after briefly talking with the police, which, well, for obvious reasons I couldn't record, they told me that to get my license, I would need a copy of my passport and my American driver's license, translated into Chinese by an approved translator. Then, I would need to register with the local police station and file for a temporary residence permit.
Easy.
Yeah, it seems like it. Once I had both of those things, I just need to show up and submit all the documents. As today was Friday, I would have to wait until Monday at the earliest to come back. To celebrate all the good news and the fact that we now have some direction, Sun took me to the smaller town outside of Lijiang, which unfortunately I don't know the name of. But we went there to explore and get food. Apparently, there's this really famous place in this little town that's known for serving pig feet stew and pidan. Pidan is also called 1,000-year egg. I have no clue what pidan or 1,000-year egg is. I had to actually search it up on Google to find out what it was, before I ate it because I was seriously so confused what a 1,000-year-old egg meant. After we walked through the town a little bit and took some pictures, we went and grabbed food, and honestly, I gotta say, the food was amazing. Since I've never tried pig's feet stew before or pidan, I honestly had no idea what to expect, but they were both super tasty. The 1,000-year egg honestly felt like you're eating a fermented jello, but it didn't have a super sour or bitter taste to it. It still kind of tasted like an egg, but it was just different. The pig's feet, aside from needing to eat around the bones, was so tender, and the fatty bits melted in your mouth as if you were eating a pork belly. Honestly, I'd recommend both dishes if you ever have the chance to eat them.